My question to you is about words, phrases that trigger OCD. What is the best way to work through them? Well, your question brings about, you may be new to the channel, even though you said you're glad you found ministry, because there's a couple protocols that I teach about that are important in understanding how to relate to intrusive thoughts. That a word, anything could trigger an intrusive thought. You could have no trigger and it gets stimulated. But what's the best way to work through them? Some might take an ERP approach, which is a good approach, and simply listen to them or read over them and sit with them and sit with the uncomfortableness until you become numb to them. No, that's not what it is. It's not to become numb. That's a misunderstanding of it. You're not becoming numb. What you're doing is no longer letting the fear be the dominant force. Some may think at first, oh, it's numbness. No, OCDers can experience numbness when they starve their compulsions, and then they start moving into the next stage, I call the doldrums, because you're no longer feeding your drama anymore. Drama. I don't mean that like in a condescending way, but the feeding the constant upheaval of chasing thoughts or compulsive acting. You starve that. It's like, what do I do with myself? So you're in this like doldrums. You don't know what to do. And that's actually where we learn how to fill our lives. I had to learn how to fill my life with what I focus on and what is good, because I've spent most of the day, if not all of it, just chasing stuff. So the goal is not numbness. It's bringing down the anxiety and its influence over that subject. And that takes practice. He said, that doesn't seem quite right to me. It's exactly how an OCDer talks. Because we're obsessed with doing the right thing, but we don't understand what we're actually needing. And many times when we practice starving our compulsions, we think we're doing something wrong. That's a classic aspect of withdrawal symptoms that kicks up. So being bombarded with stress and uneasiness until you are worn out, that's not exposure therapy either. That's not ERP. It is being bombarded with stress until you're totally worn out. That's not it either. So it's a lot of misunderstanding, because you also have a window of tolerance, right? Siegel taught about this. I think it's some good understanding of like what your emotions can take. So if I'm talking to somebody, I'm getting a sense of a window of tolerance. And if somebody can't even get out of the house, I'm not going to be like, all right, so you're going to go to the park and you're going to like, okay, we're going to start here, right? Or if the person's like, I can't even get out of bed. Oh, okay, we're going to start there, right? And there's a window of tolerance is that like where beyond that, you start hitting your over peak kind of level and overwhelm happens. And now you're no longer being able to walk through it. You're just in survival mode now. You might check out, you might numb out. So what we need to just stretch the membrane a little bit. Okay? Many of you in a metaphorical sense with your mental health, you're going to the gym on day one, you're racking up the bench press, you're shoving that thing up, and you're injuring yourself and wondering why you're injured. That's not how it works. And what works in the gym also is true in our emotional life and our spiritual life, is that it's incremental, one stage, one step after another. It's just consistently doing that. So there's exposure in a clinical setting, and then there's the IRL version of it, which I feel like I relate to more, in the sense of like, when this stuff happens, you need tools in knowing how to navigate through it when it's happening in the moment. And so if you're constantly on overwhelm, it's not going to help. You need incremental. So it's like the person who has, just using as an example, phobia of snakes. You don't throw them into a pile of snakes and go, okay, we're going to do exposure. They're going to tilt. They're going to go into a massive panic attack, and they're not going to be able to have a sense of their faculties. You start with a picture of a snake. Here it is. A picture of a non-venomous, harmless snake, right? Or something like that. Well, that's too much. I get overwhelmed. Some people can even be at that. Okay, we're just going to mention the word snake and triggers that. Okay, now we're stretching the membrane. We come back to it. We come back to it. And we come back to it. And this is the part that Christian and non-Christians need understanding of. I say Christians because Christians don't give room for the journey and the practice. Studies show that you need exposure therapy in the same area. I want to say the stat was like 25 to 27 times, and it starts to show results. And we don't realize that because we checked out after session 1. We got overwhelmed, and then we felt like we failed, and this is never going to happen. We spiral. And it's like, no, this takes practice. It takes practice of facing it and working through it. But you have to be aware of when you hit the overwhelm factor, it's like, okay, just bring it back a notch, but don't check out of it. Stay in it because you need to develop resilience. And this is the main theme in the New Testament, is developing a resilient, persevering, overcoming heart. And how are you going to have that unless you have something to overcome? So for OCDers, your response to thoughts, that's your overcoming journey. How you relate to your thoughts, how you relate to fear, that's where you're at. Learning to get rooted in grace, learning to get rooted in His love. It's a day-to-day, hour-by-hour, moment-to-moment journey that you're on. That's your discipleship. But it's not just because many people who come into the content I teach, they love my teachings on love, but they just want to just like sit in it and bask in it. And I'm like, yes, it is wonderful, but you're also gonna have to step out tomorrow and face some things where you're triggered by a word, a sentence, a person, a thing, or a theme. But it doesn't even need to be something that triggers, it just shows up. And you need a new response now to this, where fear, you're not going to be the boss anymore. And so this isn't just for obsessors, though. Do y'all understand this? This is for all of us. I've been teaching this for 20 years, at least, even when I would go speak in churches. I was like, we have a fear factor we are not dealing with. We are living in massive avoidance, and we have comforts as Americans, Western, or wherever you live. There's a lot of comforts that we have, and it's hypnotized us to not being resilient and like knowing we got to face this fear so that it no longer has power over me anymore. So anyways,